Hello everyone and welcome to Driver's Therapy. Today we're going to be talking about my karting experience. But before you think about those go-kart places and the arcades, little slow ones and the ones that just go pop, 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 we are talking about the real full-blown tag or shifter karts. And these things are insane. If you've ever been to a karting place, which if you're watching my channel, I'm pretty sure you have. And if you haven't, then you should check it out sometime. You always see those super fast, crazy looking karts, either on a stand or in a certain session. People are taking them out there and you're like, whoa, those things are fast and they sound crazy. What are they? Well, that's what we're gonna talk about in this video. And we're gonna be talking about when we decided to buy one and dive into racing and how that was pretty much crazy and why we got our butt handed to us, because the karting world is absolutely insane. It is like nothing I have ever experienced. And I've been around HPD events. I was an SCCA race car driver, club racing with Spec Miata and ITA. I mean, I've done everything under the sun when it comes to a track day event. And karting is like in a whole different universe. So essentially the way that we got lured in, and I'm not gonna blame anyone else but ourselves, is essentially we used to go to this karting place in Orlando. It was pretty cool, like the facility was neat, the track was cool, and they would put out these Groupons. And back in the days, I was like this Groupon like guru. I'd look and look and I was like, this is a great deal, let's take advantage. And they would put out these Groupons where you could just rent out their normal karts, and it was half price. And I love driving, it's a big therapy for me. So I was like, let's go drive. So Lisa and I would go and we would have so much fun. I mean, even her parents would come with us sometimes. My friend Kyle would come with us sometimes. It was just a great time. But just like anybody else, in between the sessions, these really crazy looking karts would go out and we started to ask questions. And the staff was like, oh, these are owners, they own the karts. And a lot of these people are racing in events, and these karts are like 4 or 5 times faster than the ones that you're driving. And they're probably like 10 or 20 times more expensive. And I was just like, that's insane. And I was like, well, I see you guys rent one out. And they're like, you can rent one out, but you have to go around the track at a certain time. So of course, it's a great system for them, because then you're like, oh, I want to beat the time that they have so I can rent their kart to experience it. And the crazy thing is, just to give you guys some insider information, even when you beat those times and you go drive their advanced karts, sometimes those karts aren't even the real karts that we're talking about. They're like a middle grade kart. So you always gotta know what the difference is if you're gonna pay a lot of money for their advanced karts. But essentially, this place was actually letting you rent out like a Tony kart or a CRG kart. And these are big names. And essentially, they would charge a lot. It would be like, all right, it's like $150 for 3 laps. And you'd be like, holy moly. And, or like for one session, which is like 10 minutes. And you'd have to put on a suit and a helmet and a bunch of stuff. And sometimes it wouldn't fit right. But the moment that you got in these real karts, like the speeds and everything was just insane. And if you've never driven a kart of that caliber, no supercar, nothing can come close to it, with the exception of like a super bike. Just the feelings that you get. Karting is in a whole different universe. And that is why the greatest drivers in the history of mankind started in karting. I could say all these names from Senna to Hamilton. I know you guys are probably like, come on, but trust me, the best drivers in the world come from karting. So I got that in my head because I'm a motorsport fan. So I was like, oh my gosh, Elise, these things are cool. We're racing Miatas. What if I got into this and this was my calling? What if I was like really good? Or what if I got good? Like, this is where we're gonna make it. Gosh, just thinking about that now makes me laugh. But so we were like, all right, let's do it. So there was like a gently used, almost new Tony kart. Well, it was a Cosmic kart, which was the same thing as a Tony kart. And we fell in love with it and we bought it. But oh, did we not know what we were getting into? Oh my gosh. There is nothing in the world that I've ever stepped into that was like, all right, you bought the kart, but now you need a million more things. I mean, we went from having to buy a stand because you essentially need to put it in your truck and then roll it off into a stand and then roll it into the facility and then slowly drop it into the ground. So like you had to get a stand, and every time we would go practice, and this was just going to the facility that we bought it at just to do a few laps and start getting acquainted with this beast of a little thing. You know, we'd run into like, you need new tires, you need to buy the mold tool, oil gas mixture stuff, you need to adjust your chain. You know, like if you're gonna run this engine for a race, you're gonna have to have it rebuilt. And it was insane. Like coming from racing Miatas where you just needed gas and like tires, it was the upkeep and the mechanical like responsibility and requirement was insane. Like, so we were like, all right, you know, we're here to learn, we're here to get better. And every time I'd go out, like, you know, I'd go out and I'd try to feel the kart, but it was so, the best way to describe it, it is violent. And let me tell you a reason why it's so violent and the fact why it's so violent. Let me show you this thing. Driving or racing a racing car is so violent that you have to wear one of these. You're probably wondering what this is if you're not into karting, but this is a rib protector. You heard it right. If you try to drive one of those karts that I'm talking about, you know, one of the really serious ones, you could actually break your ribs or bruise them or damage them by just turning the kart. You're right, you heard it right. Driving karts is literally one of the most exhausting, physically taxing things I have ever done in my life. But did we learn our lesson? Nope. What did we do? After about 3 months of practicing with our new kart, we signed up for a real race. And let me tell you, it is going to be an experience that will stick with me for the rest of my life. When we were racing with SCCA Club Racing, the people there are amazing. Do you want an extra part? Like, you know, you would have to pay for them, but they'll help you out. Do you want a burger? Do you need any advice? You know, like, hi, welcome, you know, smiles. A karting event was so serious and was so stuffy that I will never forget it. You had people from different countries and you had teams. You didn't just have like a driver and a mechanic or a driver and mechanic and their family. Like you had drivers, like different mechanics for different things, setup guys, tent setup guys, like logistic guys. It was insane. I remembered when I looked at the roster for the race day, and it had like flags from Germany, Mexico, the UK. It was insane. And I remember that there was like umbrella girls, and I was like, what the hell's going on here? And I was like, oh man, what is happening? So the crazy part is that I have to give big props to Orlando Karting Center, because I remember that we were there, and during our heat session or practice session or qualifying session, our motor blew, right? Gosh, on this pretty much new kart that we bought. And so, you know, we bought it from Orlando Karting Center, and they decided, you know, for this event, they're gonna go ahead and let us borrow a motor. And so they helped us put a new motor in. And I remember I went out to race, and the race started, and it was just a blur, guys. I remember that I just tried to keep up with everyone. At this point, I was last place or second to last, and every turn was just violent. It was just like, it was in Palm Beach, or PBIR, which I think has been torn down, but it was insane. It was just extremely violent. I was just trying to finish the race. And I remember that when we finished the race, I was super exhausted. My arms, my back, everything hurt. It was insane. It was hot. And I remember that I was just like, when I was racing Miatas, I would just have a great time. I'd actually be focusing to try to move up in positions. When I raced karts, believe it or not, the only thing that was going through my head was, don't quit, just finish the race. And that's when I realized, like, yeah, this is not for us. So I remember we put our kart in, and I was just like, well, we learned something. We learned that karting is in a whole different universe. It was a good, expensive experience. We ended up selling the kart, and we ended up pretty much moving on from that experience, but it was still a great one. Well, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And thanks for tuning in another Orange Chair Chat. I think that's what at least call it. All right, guys, you take care and we'll talk to you soon.